welcome back to my channel. This is Sacred Scars, Unbroken Spirit, and this is my life story. I am writing a book that will be available at a later date. So today we're going to wrap up this last segment on my family background, and we're going to talk a little bit about my brother. My brother and I do not have a relationship currently. We have been no contact as well for about 17 years, give or take. By the way, if you have not watched the previous videos on my narcissistic mother, my physically abusive father, as well as my psychopathic ex-sister, I would highly recommend going back and watching those so you have a better understanding of the dysfunctional family dynamic that I was unfortunately born into, as well as how they play into my crazy life story. So my brother is 3 years younger than me. We grew up together and had a pretty normal childhood. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different than the past ones, as I myself personally am very big on accountability and I can own when I am at fault. So being the older sibling, my brother and I fought a lot growing up. If anything, I was initially the mean one. Sometimes our fights would get physical. I indeed was the bigger and stronger one. So, for example, if we were fighting over a game, sometimes I would beat him up. There have been many times he would intentionally push my buttons, and then I would just lose it and swing on him. This could be anything from copying me word for word what I'm saying. For example, if I wanted something specific for dinner, all of a sudden he wanted it too. And then he would laugh at me. Like he knew he was triggering me and he thought it was funny to watch me get mad. Or another example, I would say something, he would then repeat that same sentence or whatever, and it would just go on and on and on, back and forth. And it would make me so angry. Granted, he was only like 5 years old at the time, and these are just things that kids do. At 8 years old, I didn't have the emotional regularity that I do now. Looking back, being raised in an abusive household probably played a part in it. Actually, I would say it most definitely did. I was acting out both things that I saw and things that were done to me. They were most definitely learned behaviors that I really had to unlearn later on in life. So ultimately, every time my brother made me mad, I unfortunately resorted to violence. Admittedly, there were times I did beat him up pretty bad, depending on how triggered I got. I was about 7 years old at the time that the physical fights had started. Now, in retrospect, there was a time I did stick up for him too. My parents actually had to tell me this story because I was so young at the time. I was only 4 years old. But apparently some kids were messing with my brother on the playground. If I remember correctly, something was thrown and hit him or something like that. And so at 4 years old, I went over and punched the little girl to defend my brother. It's not funny. Looking back, I do realize how terrible it sounds to be so young and already learning to pick fights with people. It just goes to show we have to be so very, very careful about what our children witness in the household, because they're like sponges and they will start to replicate what they see, and they will start at a very, very young age. I would say me and my brother both were pretty mean to each other. It went both ways, just in different ways. So where I struggled to regulate my emotions, my brother was a bit more devious. I can remember a time where he took my absolute favorite comfort blanket from when I was a baby. I held on to it for many, 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 many years, and he took it and threw it in the trash. That, as minor as it may seem, it was absolutely devastating to me. And it took many, 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 many months for me to emotionally recover from that. I never, ever, ever forgot. I can remember a time when I was about 12 years old. I had left the house and started running away. I don't remember much about why, but I do recall it having something to do with not liking what my parents had made me for dinner and wanting chicken nuggets instead. So I ran down the street and I made it across the actual road with traffic on it, plus a few blocks. The neighbor that lived down the street from our house had actually caught me, and she made me a plate of chicken nuggets to bring home. But as it turns out, my brother stuck up for me and he told my parents not to punish me. Surprisingly, lo and behold, they actually listened. And again, this was so surprising considering how the tables have turned and things were very, very different as far as punishment when I got older. So things started to escalate between my brother and I about in our teen years. When I was 15 years old, we had a really bad fight over something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I beat him up and he in turn destroyed my PlayStation. We both, after that, got paddled by my dad with his homemade carved 1.5-inch thick wood paddle. This led me to later seek revenge in my early 20s. There was a day when I asked my brother if he was going to work. He was employed at the Dollar Tree. Now, keep this little detail in mind because it is going to tie in to another event that I will explain later on. We'll kind of get into it later on. But he did say yes, that he was working that day. And so I did take advantage of that opportunity to grab his Xbox and pawn it. Eye for an eye is how I saw it. I do acknowledge now that I'm older that I'm no better and I should not have done that to him. Two wrongs do not make a right. My brother did end up getting his Xbox back and I got in trouble. I had to go with my dad to get it back for him. Little did I know, my actions that day in that incident would change our lives forever and basically tear my family apart for years to come. That same night, my brother got the scare of his life and he blamed me because of my asking if he was going to work earlier that day. At the time, there was a string of Dollar Tree robberies in the area, and my brother's store just happened to be the one hit that night. As mentioned in previous videos, my dad was a retired police officer at the time. He was off duty that day. Now, my mom is also highly intuitive, and that night, something told her to tell my dad to go check on my brother at the store. She just got a really bad feeling in her gut that something was very wrong. And sure enough, there was. It was very late at night. This Dollar Tree store had already closed, and the manager was walking out with my brother after closing up the shop. The manager had a bag of money on him with, the deposit from the day that would later be brought to the bank. Now, I don't believe in coincidences. I truly, truly feel that the way that all of this played out was absolutely not by chance. Right as my dad was pulling up to my brother's Dollar Tree store, right in the middle, the manager he caught it right in the moment. The manager was getting robbed. And as far as my understanding, the manager got beat up and my brother went to go hide behind his car. He had a very nice, fairly expensive sports car. The robber ended up slashing his tires, and then my dad proceeded to try to stop the robbery that was already in progress. The robber supposedly reached for my dad's pew-pew, and in turn, my dad hit the robber 2 times in the chest, as far as I understand. I believe the robber did survive, and he went to jail that night. So, after pawning my brother's Xbox, I was out that night hanging out with some friends at a different location. But because I had asked my brother earlier if he was going to be around or if he was going to be at work, he immediately thought that I set the robbery up. Now, it was not uncommon for everyone in my family to make me the scapegoat and blame me for things that I didn't do. This situation was no different. That night, right after the robbery and pew-pewing, it was about 1:00 in the morning, and I got a call from an officer saying that I needed to come down to the station. When I arrived, they informed me that I was being investigated for this crime that happened, even though I wasn't even there. So they asked me a bunch of questions and showed me a picture of the robber to see if I recognized him. To be frank, the guy looked like a crackhead, maybe in his 60s, and that was not my type of crowd to hang out with. I told the officer, no, I didn't know him, and I did not set up the robbery. They ended up clearing my name and sending me home within a couple hours, but my brother still never believed it, and he never let me live it down, even to this day. Ever since, we never spoke again after that incident, and it has been over 17 years. We have been absolutely no contact. Due to my brother holding a lifelong grudge, this tore my family apart. My family took his side, and still to this day, they don't believe me, even though the officer cleared me. My dad was also cleared of any wrongdoing, and although I personally don't believe the robber actually reached for his pew-pew. It's common knowledge. That's a very common cover-up used to protect officers when things like this happen. I believe that my dad was just trying to protect his son, and I believe that he reacted impulsively. So this grudge that my brother was holding against me, it went so far as to him refusing to even be in the same room as me. He lives in another state. And so this affected my family in many, many ways. Mainly it was the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So on Thanksgiving, my parents would spend that with me, and Christmas, I would be left behind while they went up to see my brother. This went on for about 13 years, and it tormented my mother more than anyone else. She was so very upset that the family couldn't be together during the holidays. I have watched my mother cry many, many times over the years. I was very hurt also because that meant that I spent many, many Christmases alone. It's very difficult to put into words the feeling of waking up Christmas morning with absolutely nobody around you, even though you have a family, because they're choosing to go spend it with your brother every year instead. And sometimes they would even take my son up there to visit as well. So there were years that I really, truly was alone for Christmas. This ultimately led me to develop a very, very strong hatred for Christmas. So much so that a couple years ago, I actually decided to no longer celebrate the holiday, and I switched to the pagan holiday Yuletide. Now, I have tried to extend an olive branch once or twice over the years to my brother, but he has always refused. So I decided, forget it. Why try to forgive him and make peace with someone unwilling to see my side and believe me, I've always maintained my innocence. So if he wants to hold a grudge and let our family fall apart, even though this was 20 years ago, fine, so be it. No amount of getting older or emotionally maturing would get him to drop it. So to this day, it continues. Being blamed for so many years when I truly didn't set up the robbery had me angry for a period of time, and I eventually sought out revenge. Well, I didn't exactly look for it, but an opportunity presented itself during a period where I was struggling paying my bills. It was impulsive, and admittedly, it was somewhat out of greed. I, at the time, had a terrible lack of self-control, and thus I took my brother's laptop for school and I tried to pawn it. I remember that I was not successful. The pawn shop, for whatever reason, would not take it. I did end up returning the item to my brother, as I did get caught and he found out I took it. He was incredibly angry, and rightfully so. We ended up having a fist fight. This time, I was the one that got beat up, as he was now bigger than me. But that wasn't the end of it. My dad also beat me as punishment for taking his laptop. My brother got punished for hitting me, and so it was all kind of one big thing. It's safe to say that this was the last time I would physically fight my brother, as I could no longer hold my own against his height. This incident also caused me to reflect on my behaviors, and since then I began taking steps to stop stealing from him and work on being a better human going forward. In June of 2024, my brother got married. Because of our conflict, I, of course, was not invited to the wedding. However, my mother went behind my back, and without asking me, she started to make plans to put my son in the wedding as the ring bearer. She did not come forward to discuss this with me because she knew it would be an immediate hell no. I didn't find out until just a few days before the wedding that they had planned this. Furious was an understatement, because I had already made the decision a long time ago that I did not want my son involved with that side of the family. I did not want my son to even know my brother or have any kind of relationship with him, if I'm being completely honest. As such, I shut those plans down, because that would mean I too would have had to show up and attend the wedding, and I did not want to be present in a place where I was not welcome. Additionally, I had never even met his fiance. I didn't know them, and the whole thing would have just been incredibly awkward. I feel that my mother just wanted us there to fill their side of the wedding at reception, as we do not have a huge family, and they just didn't want to feel embarrassed for having nobody there, being the only two there supporting the groom, while the bride's side was filled with tons of family and friends. I feel it's important to mention that my brother was obviously the favorite, and I'm the black sheep in the family. So it made sense my family would take his side. They've always handed him everything, whereas I had to work and earn everything that I have. Now, we did both get cars on our 16th birthday, but I got a very basic Honda Civic, and he got a really nice, expensive sports car. He got a Saturn Sky. Now, back then, this was 20 years ago, but back then, they ran about $26,000. And mind you, my brother was 16 years old. It was his very first car, and he got this badass, he also got a free ride to college with a track scholarship. And after getting his MBA, he was given a whole entire burger store to manage. And this burger store pulls about $300,000 a year. So it goes without saying, he makes very good money, and he was very much capable of carving his own path. However, my parents also gave him a house, which he lives in for free with his wife today. In retrospect, my degree is not usable with what I do. And so I've always had to work several jobs to cover my financial responsibilities, rent, etc., etc., etc. I have also been very, very sick for many years, so I have not been able to work a regular 9 to 5. I've still been stuck under their roof. I was the one that needed help, but instead, he was the one that got extras. Now, you would think that my parents would want to get me out of their hair since I was such a nuisance in their eyes. But here we are. All of this to say, there most definitely was a difference in how each of us as siblings were treated, which is kind of ironic, being that it was a similar situation between my ex-half-sister and I. The only difference was because he was the favorite, it really didn't bother me, and I didn't seek out a bunch of, I had my moments, but I didn't make it like a life mission to come for him. I didn't care. I was very much able to just let things go and move on. I've wanted nothing to do with this messed up, estranged family for so many years, and I will never be looking back once I do get out on my own. So that about wraps up this segment on my dysfunctional family's dynamic. There are other members that are also not speaking to each other, and we'll go into their impact on my life later on. As far as I'm aware, my brother is also no contact with our mom, as he is unfortunately starting to experience the things that I went through while living with her. I want to thank you all for your support on this journey and invite you to like this video if you enjoyed it. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you have not already and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss a beat. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.